The vastness of space was a graveyard of forgotten ships, silent witnesses to battles long lost. Among the drifting wreckage, a colossal warship floated aimlessly, its once glorious hull now scarred and broken. It belonged to the Exilari Empire, a species known for their ruthless expansion, but now this vessel was nothing more than a dying beast in the void. For years, it had remained undisturbed, a lifeless relic abandoned by its creators. That changed when a human salvage crew aboard the Star Hunter stumbled upon it. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the massive wreck through the viewport, his mind racing with possibilities. This was not just another broken ship, it was an opportunity. The ship's hull was cracked in multiple places, its energy readings flickering like a dying ember. The human crew debated whether boarding it was worth the risk. Some argued it was too unstable, a floating coffin waiting to claim more lives. But Carter wasn't the kind of man to walk away from something extraordinary. With a determined look, he ordered the team to suit up. As they approached in their small transport shuttle, the sheer scale of the vessel became overwhelming. It was easily 5 times larger than any human warship, and despite its broken state, an aura of power still lingered around it. The moment they stepped inside, the air was thick with the scent of burnt metal and decay. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the corridor walls. The ship groaned as if it was alive, its wounded body protesting the intrusion. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the distant hum of failing power systems. Moving cautiously, the team navigated through the wreck, their boots echoing on the cold metallic floors. The deeper they went, the more apparent became this ship had not simply been abandoned. There were signs of battle inside. Scorch marks lined the walls, bodies of alien warriors lay motionless in the dim corridors, their armor cracked, their weapons still clutched in lifeless hands. Something terrible had happened here. Carter knelt beside one of the bodies, studying the deep gashes on the armor. These were not from explosions or stray shots, this was something else. Something had torn through the Exilari soldiers, something that was neither human nor mechanical. The realization sent a chill down his spine. He looked at his engineer, a young but brilliant woman named Dr. Tessa Vance, who was already scanning the ship's core systems. "This isn't just any warship," she whispered. This thing was still running some kind of high-energy experiment when it was attacked. She pointed at a flickering control panel, lines of alien script flashing erratically. Whatever happened, they tried to shut everything down before they lost control. The crew pressed forward, reaching what appeared to be the main command center. The captain activated his wrist-mounted translator, trying to make sense of the alien logs. What he found sent a jolt of unease through him. The Exilari had feared something within their own ship. There were desperate messages about a containment breach, warnings to never reactivate the central power core. Yet, despite those warnings, the humans had already done enough to wake the ship. A low vibration ran through the floor, subtle but unmistakable. The ship was responding to their presence. Systems that had been dead for years began to stir, consoles flickering back to life, the dim emergency lights growing brighter. Vance stared at her scanner, confusion and concern mixing on her face. "Captain, something is still operational here, and it knows we're inside." Before Carter could respond, a deep metallic groan echoed through the corridors, followed by a sudden, sharp shift in gravity. The ship was adjusting itself. Then came the sound of something moving, something large. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They weren't alone. Somewhere in the vast, broken warship, something had just awakened. The ship was no longer dead. It was waking up, slowly, like a wounded predator sensing movement around it. Captain Elias Carter stood in the command center of the massive alien warship, watching the control panels flicker back to life. The glow of unknown symbols reflected off his visor as he clenched his jaw. This ship was never meant to be left floating in space. It had been abandoned for a reason, but now his crew had disturbed its slumber. The vibrations beneath their feet grew stronger as power surged through the ancient vessel's veins, the hum of energy filling the cold, lifeless corridors. His engineer, Dr. Tessa Vance, frantically worked on her scanner, eyes darting between alien data streams and the readings flashing on her screen. "Captain, This ship isn't just repairing itself. It's adapting, she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Whatever technology they were using, it's reacting to us. Carter exhaled sharply. They had come here looking for salvage, maybe something valuable to take back home. Instead, they had stumbled onto a machine that was far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. The ship was massive, a war engine built by the Exilari Empire, but something had gone terribly wrong. Its own creators had abandoned it, left it to drift and die. And yet, here it was, responding to human touch, like a sleeping giant awakening after centuries. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Darius Cole, kept his rifle raised, scanning the darkened passageways. "We should shut it down, Captain." "Something about this doesn't feel right," he warned. This thing was never meant to be in human hands. But Carter wasn't ready to give up. A ship like this, if they could get it working, would change everything. Humanity had always been at a disadvantage in the galactic wars, always seen as the weaker species. With a ship like this, that would no longer be the case. Vance pressed a few buttons on the control panel, her fingers moving quickly. The alien interface was difficult to understand, but the patterns were starting to make sense. The ship had advanced shielding weapons systems that far surpassed anything Earth had, and an engine that could travel distances faster than any known human vessel. But what stood out the most was the ship's core, a reactor unlike anything she had ever seen, pulsing with energy. "This thing is half alive," she said, her voice filled with both awe and fear. "It's trying to restore itself. The question is, what exactly is it restoring?" The ship shuddered violently, and for a moment, the gravity fluctuated, causing the crew to stumble. A deep, guttural sound echoed through the corridors, like metal grinding against metal, like the ship itself was groaning in response to their interference. Carter steadied himself and looked at his crew. "We came here to salvage," he said firmly. "But this is bigger than that. If we can bring this ship back online, we might be looking at the most powerful vessel in the galaxy." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one argued. They had seen enough to know this was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Vance took a deep breath and activated a command sequence, bypassing the ship's security protocols with brute force. The alien text flickered, then rearranged itself, as if recognizing their presence. A sudden surge of energy pulsed through the walls, and then, for the first time in years, the ship's main power came back online. The emergency lights were replaced by a cold blue glow. A deep hum filled the air, and the structure around them trembled as systems reactivated. Then came the sound of movement. Not from the ship, but from something inside it. Cole spun around, his rifle raised. "Something's here," he said, his voice tight with tension. From the darkness of the corridor, faint, unnatural clicking noises echoed through the air. Carter felt a cold chill run down his spine. The ship was supposed to be empty. Whatever had killed the original crew should have been long gone. But as the shadows shifted and an eerie metallic clatter echoed through the air, one thing became clear: they were not alone. The ship had been abandoned, but not forgotten. Something had been waiting inside, and now, as the humans revived the warship, it had woken up too. A sudden burst of static erupted from the control panel, followed by a low mechanical growl. Vance gasped as alien symbols rapidly flashed across the screen, faster than she could process. "Captain, something is overriding the system," she shouted. "It's not just coming back online, it's resisting us." Carter gritted his teeth. They had come too far to stop now. "Then we fight it," he said. "Whatever this thing is, we take control before it takes control of us." With a sharp hiss, the doors around them slammed shut, locking them inside. A deep, pulsating red light filled the command center, and a robotic voice crackled through the ship's speakers, speaking in the Exilari language. Vance's translator struggled to keep up, but the message was clear. One word kept repeating over and over again. "Intruders." Then, from the depths of the ship, something moved. Something fast. Something that had been waiting for this moment. The ship was alive. Not just functioning, not just powered on alive. Captain Elias Carter could feel it in the way the walls pulsed with energy, in the hum beneath his feet, in the flickering lights that seemed almost aware of their presence. The ancient warship, once a lifeless wreck, was now fully awakened, and it was responding to them. But the humans were not the only ones who had noticed. A Solari war fleet had arrived, blocking every escape route. Their message was clear: surrender the ship or die. Said, his voice calm but firm. This ship isn't just salvage anymore. It's our home now. And we are not giving it up. The enemy fleet wasted no time. Bright lances of energy erupted from their cannons, streaking across the void towards Genesis. The ship's shields flared as they absorbed the first impacts, but warning sirens blared instantly. They were running on unstable systems, and the power core, still a mystery to them, was struggling to compensate. Shields at 60%. Dr. Tessa Vance shouted, her fingers flying across the alien control panel. If we don't find a way to boost power, we won't last 5 minutes. The ship shuddered violently as another wave of fire slammed into them. Sparks rained down from overhead conduits. They needed to strike back now. Carter turned to Lieutenant Darius Cole. Weapons status? He barked. Cole scanned the displays, frustration clear on his face. We have cannons, but they aren't optimized for human use. Targeting systems are still adapting. That wasn't good enough. Carter knew the Acceleri wouldn't wait for them to figure things out. Then we do it manually, he said. Fire everything we have. Cole didn't hesitate. He slammed his hand on the firing controls, and Genesis answered with a roar. Alien weaponry, now under human control, unleashed its fury. Brilliant beams of energy shot from the warship's turrets, lashing out at the enemy fleet. One of the smaller Acceleri ships took a direct hit, its shields collapsing before it erupted into a fireball. But the others were ready. They split apart, surrounding the Genesis from all sides, closing in like wolves circling wounded prey. More impacts rattled the hull, and the shields dropped to 30%. Vance's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, we need more power to the weapons, or we're dead. But where would they get more power? Carter's mind raced. The core. The mysterious, alien power source buried deep within the ship. They had been too cautious with it, too afraid of what it might do. But now they had no choice. Vance, bypass the safety protocols, Carter ordered. I want every ounce of energy that core can give us. She hesitated for only a second before nodding. You better be right about this, Captain, she muttered as she entered the override commands. The moment the lock was released, the ship changed. The lights surged with power. The hum in the air deepened, and the once sluggish systems reacted with terrifying speed. The ship's weapons realigned on their own, as if sensing the battlefield. New targeting solutions appeared on Cole's screen, calculations too fast for any human mind. Captain, Cole said, staring at the display in awe. I think it's helping us. Carter's grip on the console tightened. Then let's not waste it. He turned to his crew. Fire again, full power. This time, Genesis struck like a living predator. The main cannon unleashed a beam of energy so powerful that it sliced through a Solari cruiser in a single shot. The enemy fleet, once confident in their numbers, hesitated. Another blast ripped through their ranks, sending debris scattering through space. The Solari ships attempted to regroup, but Genesis was faster, smarter. With the ship's systems now fully engaged, it moved with an agility no warship of its size should have. It twisted through enemy fire, striking back with precision. One by one, the Solari ships fell, until only a single warship remained their command vessel. A message flashed on their comms. The Solari commander's voice was filled with disbelief and fury. That ship does not belong to you, humans. You do not understand what you have awakened. Carter smirked, wiping sweat from his brow. Then come and take it, he replied. The Solari ship hesitated. It could have fired. It could have fought to the bitter end. But instead, it turned and fled. The warship that had once been a derelict, forgotten wreck had just sent an entire fleet running. For a long moment, silence filled the bridge. The crew barely dared to breathe. Then, finally, Cole let out a low chuckle. Captain, he said, shaking his head, We just turned a broken ship into the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Carter exhaled, staring at the controls before him. This battle was over, but something told him it was only the beginning. The Genesis was awake now, and whatever secrets it held, the universe would soon find out. The stars burned with silent indifference as the Genesis drifted through the void, its dark hull absorbing the distant light. It was no longer a derelict. It was no longer abandoned. It was alive, pulsing with an energy no human fully understood. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge, watching the incoming transmission flicker onto the holographic screen. The Galactic Dominion had finally responded. They had seen what Genesis could do. They had witnessed a human-controlled warship obliterate an entire Exilari fleet in mere minutes. And now, they had issued a final warning: surrender the ship or be erased from existence. Carter's grip tightened on the armrest of his command chair. The enemy fleet was massive, stretching across the void like an iron wall. Hundreds of ships, some the size of cities, all armed and ready. He could feel the tension in the air as his crew waited for his decision. "They think they can scare us," Lieutenant Darius Cole muttered, his fingers resting near the weapons console. "They think we're just a weak species playing with fire." Carter exhaled slowly. "Then we show them what happens when you underestimate humans." Dr. Tessa Vance, the ship's chief engineer, barely looked up from her screens. "Captain, the Genesis is still adapting," she warned. "We're pushing it beyond what we understand. If we engage in a full battle, there's no guarantee we'll survive." But Carter knew there was no turning back. Surrender meant extinction. Running meant being hunted for the rest of their lives. There was only one path forward: war. "They think this ship is just a machine," Carter said, his voice calm but filled with certainty. "But it's more than that. It's a force of nature. And today, the Dominion learns what it means to face humanity's reckoning." The first shots came from the Dominion fleet. Blinding lances of energy surged forward, each one powerful enough to shatter a planet's surface. But the Genesis moved not with the sluggish hesitation of a human warship, but with the precision of a living thing. It twisted through the enemy fire, its shields flaring as it absorbed the brutal onslaught. The bridge trembled, warning sirens blaring, but Carter barely flinched. "Return fire," he ordered. The ship answered, not with human weapons, but with something more. The alien technology that had once belonged to the Exilari had evolved, had merged with its human pilots. The main cannon roared, unleashing a beam of energy so concentrated that it cut through the Dominion's front line like a blade slicing paper. 3 enemy battleships erupted in flames instantly, their remains scattering into the abyss. The Dominion hesitated, thrown off by the raw power now under human control. But hesitation did not last long. The enemy fleet adjusted, surrounding Genesis from all sides. Carter could hear Vance cursing under her breath as the ship took another brutal hit. "Shields at 30%, she shouted. "We need more power, or we're not going to make it." The core. It had saved them before. It had granted them power beyond understanding. But it was dangerous, unstable. And yet, Carter knew there was no choice. "Unlock the core's full potential," he commanded. Vance's fingers hovered over the controls. "Captain, we don't know what it will do." Carter's jaw tightened. Neither do they. The moment she activated the sequence, the ship changed. A deep pulse echoed through the hull, the lights dimming for a fraction of a second before exploding with power. The Genesis surged forward, moving faster than anything the Dominion had ever faced. The weapons recalibrated, targeting enemy ships before they could react. And then it struck. Beams of pure destruction shot out in every direction, tearing through enemy lines. The Dominion fleet, which had been an unbreakable force for centuries, was suddenly on the defensive. A super dreadnought, the pride of the Dominion's navy, turned its colossal weapons towards Genesis. It was a floating fortress, designed to annihilate entire civilizations. Carter's eyes narrowed. Let's see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. The Genesis charged, its engines burning with a glow that defied physics. The super dreadnought fired, unleashing enough firepower to obliterate a moon. The ship shook violently, alarms screaming, but it did not stop. It refused to stop. As the enemy's defenses overloaded, Carter gave the final order. Fire everything. The Genesis responded like a beast set free. A final, devastating blast erupted from its core, striking the dreadnought dead center. For a second, time seemed to freeze. Then, in an instant, the Dominion's flagship imploded, its enormous structure collapsing in on itself before vanishing in a silent explosion. The remaining enemy ships hesitated. Their strongest weapon, their greatest warship, had just been erased. The Dominion fleet broke. Some ships tried to retreat, others attempted a last, desperate attack, but it was too late. Genesis hunted them down, one by one, until the battlefield was nothing more than wreckage and silence. For the first time in history, the Galactic Dominion had lost. Not to another empire. Not to an alliance of species. But to humans. "What are you doing, human?" Carter exhaled, allowing himself a small, defiant smile. "Showing you why you should have left us alone." And then the Genesis unleashed hell. The overloaded core erupted, its energy spiraling outward in a wave of destruction that devoured everything in its path. The Dominion ships didn't have time to react. The mighty warships, once symbols of their empire's dominance, were reduced to nothing. The explosion burned through space, a storm of vengeance so powerful that even the stars seemed to tremble. When the fire faded, there was only silence. The last human warship was gone. The last warriors of Earth had fallen. But the Dominion's entire fleet had been erased with them. The empire that had once ruled the galaxy with fear had just learned what it meant to face true resistance. In the end, humanity did not go quietly. It did not beg, did not surrender. It fought. And even in death, it had won.